Empathy and responsibility are completely genderless. They are just what it means to be a good parent. Gay parents have been shown to make just as good parents as straight ones. Mind you, it's rare for gay parents to have oops babies either, which means they have put a lot of time, money, and energy into adopting a child. The main issue in good parenting is multiple eyes and multiple people caring and spending time with them. Personality type has much more of an impact on your parenting than gender, for those of you who think that there needs to be a father and a mother to have a family. I know several women who take the father-style approach. Single parents who have the help of their parents do fairly well, too, if the mother isn't mooching off her parents and shirking her responsibilities, or the grandparents aren't spoiling the child. The child needs structure and consistency. Sadly, the patriarchal model has fractured the nurturing parent into a strict father or a cool, loving friend. According to the neuroeconomist Paul Zak, oxytocin is the chemical in our brains that generates altruism, trust, and bonding. When used with mirror neurons, they create empathy. Oxytocin is a weak and fragile chemical that can be easily destroyed. It's very low at baseline in us and requires stimulation to be produced, dropping off rapidly. Studies show that nations with higher levels of trustworthy people have higher prosperity as they produce more financial interactions, while poor countries have lower trust between people. A study under very controlled conditions showed that when a complete stranger over the internet showed generosity in a one-time transaction that tripled the amount when given to another person to cooperate in a game theory experiment with real money on the line, the person receiving the cash had an oxytocin spike, and they were much more likely to be generous and return the favor, even when they had no way of getting any more money back from that person. Because the generosity increased, the total payment they all made off with was a lot more. This experiment showed that 95% of people who received money also returned the favor due to the induction of oxytocin. 5% had no spike in oxytocin. These are people listed as either emotionally damaged or they have sociopathic or psychopathic tendencies. Using men on oxytocin inhalers, they raised that number. Plus, they more than doubled the number of people who sent all of their money to another person. Using the inhaler increased unilateral transaction by 80% and donations to charity by 50%. Dancing, hugging, massages, and praying increase oxytocin. Praying is used in churches, and consciously or not, to get more donations. Adam Smith made the observation that if you have empathy, you can feel the pain of others and avoid doing things to others, and if something good happens to that person, you can share in their joy. Sadly, empathy is something that must be cultivated. The ability for the brain to produce or be affected by oxytocin can be damaged by trauma in childhood. When a child feels they can be open and emotionally trust their parents, they show higher IQs. On top of that, if they feel oxytocin, they will be more likely to try and do things that make their parents happy, to share in both joy and praise. High stress inhibits oxytocin, so if they get spanked often, they won't feel empathy nearly as much, and they will care less about their parents' praise and encouragement. A study of sexually abused women showed that about half could not produce oxytocin either. People can use or abuse our oxytocin to sucker us out of things that are in the small minority of the 5%, which means we have to be aware, but not be distrustful of everyone. The small 5% that doesn't release oxytocin on stimulus make up the psychopaths and the sociopaths in society. These are people with something wrong with them, not the majority. The world is not nearly as evil as the father model would lead us to think, especially if most of us are allowed to let our oxytocin sensitivity thrive. Testosterone is something that can also destroy oxytocin. Men with high levels of testosterone were found to be more greedy, but at the same time more self-righteously adamant in using their own money to punish others who were greedy. It sadly has an evolutionary advantage in young men for the purpose of acquiring wealth and therefore a mate. The father model relies on raw testosterone. It discourages boys who don't want to punish as much as they do. It's also looked on as sissy, impractical, and girly if they want to be open and express their emotions. It's why the father model relies on strong discipline, father making men out of their boys who won't trust others either. Paul Zak claims that about 8 hugs a day is what the average person needs to feel emotionally bonded and happy. Being the strong father does not allow the father to be emotionally bonded to the child. He must remain distant, or he won't be able to punish, causing the child not to be self-disciplined when they go out on their own in this evil, painful world of suffering and people out to get you. People they assume are just like them, unempathetic. Religion is a collection of these frames. They narrow down all the possibilities that arguments could take. They narrow down the arguments to a binary good-evil narrative, as opposed to exploring all options. They take small subsections of reality that fit their narrative and completely ignore the rest of reality and blind you to the possibility that there could possibly be alternatives or multiple arguments to the question at hand. If that part of reality was all there was to it, their logical reason would not be wrong at all. So it sounds really logical, even if it's dead wrong. Religion had thousands of years to build and ingrain the population with their frames and worldviews. If a person experienced anything, they only knew how to explain it in the frame of religion. Anything outside that frame was meaningless, and that's why facts don't work with many religious people. If the fact doesn't fit their worldview, they ignore it, and they are completely blind to its relevance as they can't process it. An example of this is the epistemological frame. They hold the position that faith is a virtue and essential to be a believer. That belief without evidence is a great and wonderful thing. If you talk to them about evidence, they won't even grasp what you're trying to tell them. Since the beginning of 2000 and the rise of the internet and YouTube, we've tried and refined the atheist narrative over and over again, and it's becoming more and more a frame people can understand and get behind. And we'll continue to work together to show people there is much more to reality than the oversimplified subsection argument presented by the church. We counter with the idea of science and explain and repeat over and over again and educate how we know what we know about reality and how faith is not a virtue, but just another word for gullibility. There are many ways to attack this frame, but it's very strong and needs repetition to get a new frame. Luckily for us, science doesn't use any of the same words or phrases that religion does, which is essential for countering a frame. A way to get around it is to stop using words that they are so opposed to and create your own words, and definitely avoid using their words and language. It's been shown that if you were to explain evolution or climate change without using these words, in a way that doesn't make you appear like a scientist, people will actually learn and accept your claims, and it will make sense to them. Many atheists I know are very proud of themselves because they were able to overcome their religious biases. They see themselves as superior to people who have, while many remain completely oblivious, that they are still slaves to their own biases. Because atheist is just the first step to becoming anti-biased, anti-bias, or the more often abused label skeptic, is a realization that you will always be biased, and because of that you can train yourself to take steps to reduce the effects of your bias. Otherwise, anything that seems right to you will sway you, and you will end up falling for more falsehoods, just like I did as a religious person.